James Barfield here with your Urban Connection. This is a channel that is often imitated but never duplicated because you see, they just won't touch the issues and things that we talk about here. And today is going to be no exception. We're going to talk about something today that you won't find on your local television station, you won't find on your local newspaper, you won't find hardly on any podcast, but you'll find it right here on your Urban Connection. Now, I want to talk to you today about the talk. And when I say the talk, for every generation, there is a talk that takes place between parents and preteen and teenage girls and boys. Now, back when I was a teenager, or maybe pre-teenager, my mom and dad had the talk with me. And at that time, the talk was about the birds and the bees. Okay? Now, some of you have heard about this talk. Some of you have even engaged in it. But basically, it consists of two things. For the boys, keep your pants zipped up. And for the girls, keep your skirt down and your legs closed. Okay? Now, that worked pretty well for a period of time. As a matter of fact, up until the time the pill came along. Okay? And then basically that talk began to diminish. Now, another generation came along, and I myself became a parent, and I had the talk with my son when he was a teenager. And my talk went something like this. There are certain things that you do when you're out with your so-called buddies. But one thing you don't do is don't be caught riding around, especially at night, with 3 or 4 other boys in the car. Because basically, that is the best way to get stopped by the police. Okay? They see 3 to 4, 5 young black boys riding together, and like I said, especially at night, that's trouble. Okay? Now, the other part of that is when you are stopped, and I won't say if, when you are stopped, know how to conduct yourself. Be polite, be respectful, obey commands. Okay, even if you disagree, obey commands. If you're asked to show your license, show your license. If you're asked to show your insurance card, show your insurance card. The only question you should ask is, why am I stopped, officer? Why did you stop me? He has the responsibility to answer that question. Other than that, obey the commands and hope that you have not came across or came upon a trigger happy cop. Okay? Because that's what we see too many times today. So now we advance to another generation. And I think it's time, actually it's past time, but I think there's no time better than now for this generation of parents to have this talk with their preteen and teenage boys, especially, and even in some cases, girls. And the talk should go something like this. I want to know who it is that you're running around with. I want to know what their background is. I want to know who their parents are. I want to know where you're going when you leave home at night. And I want to know, without you lying to me, if you're carrying heat or packing heat. Or you're in a gang. And don't lie to me. Because if you are, I'm going to insist that you change the people you run around with. Because if you continue along the path you're on right now, I'm afraid that you are going to get yourself and your buddies into some deep, dark trouble. And the trouble goes like this. One night, I'm afraid that I'll get a telephone call between 9 p.m. and probably 2 a.m. if he's allowed to stay out that late. I'm going to get a call, and you know who's going to be on the other end of that phone? More than likely, it's going to be a police officer. And you know what his message is going to be for me? Your son is in trouble. Your son is in trouble. This is Sergeant so-and-so of the Wichita Police Department. You ask, what kind of trouble is he in? Ma'am, I would like to ask for you to come and meet me at such and such a hospital or at such and such a jail. But your son is in trouble. Now, if you're lucky, your son maybe has been involved in some kind of a mishap. He might have been involved in some gang activity. He might have been involved in some shooting. But hopefully, if you're lucky, he's still alive. Now, the problem is that gangs and guns don't mix. Gangs, guns, and drugs don't mix. So if your youngster is involved in any of that, you're basically playing Russian roulette because it's just a matter of time. Because when they play that dangerous game, normally, usually, it ends up in two people being taken from our community. It means that one of them, if there's been a shooting, especially a deadly shooting, one of them is going to the cemetery. And the other one, more often than not, is going to prison. So now our neighborhood has been robbed of two young, unproductive lives that were lost much too early. They leave behind grieving fathers, grieving mothers, grieving siblings, brothers and sisters, and sometimes grieving friends. They leave this earth much too soon. Their lives were taken by someone that had no right to take a life. But, you see, they never had to talk. You never told them about the dangers that they were facing, the risks they were taking. You see, if these kids have to have a gun or pack heat everywhere they go, that means they're doing something wrong. And they are, every time they leave home, going looking for trouble. And too many oftentimes they find it. So let's say they're trying to make the news. They want to be on 6 o'clock news on TV. They want to be on the morning paper. You know what? All too often, they make the news. In the newspapers, you'll find them in the obituary section. On television, you'll find their pictures being flashed all over the place. And then parents, in addition to grieving, find themselves embarrassed and humiliated and at a loss of words for why this happened to my son or my daughter. But yet, you didn't take the time to have that talk with them. You were okay not knowing who the hell they were running around with, not knowing the reputation of who they were running around with, not knowing what they were up to when they left home. not knowing how many people were involved in their group at any given time. Folks, this does not have to happen. And basically, it's time for it to stop. These teenagers and pre-teenagers and young adults must learn that our shopping malls are not meant for a shooting range. These are commercial ventures where entrepreneurs provide goods and services to what they expect to be normal, safe patrons who come to the mall to consume and purchase the goods and services that they provide. They shouldn't have to worry about a shootout occurring between two gangs or two gang members in their mall. This is not a playpen. This is not a nightclub. And nightclubs deserve the same respect as does a mall, as does a restaurant. These are not places to engage in violent activity where you often could and do sometimes shoot innocent people who are there to conduct a commercial business, only to be the subject of an unintended bullet or bullets. So I'm calling on all of you parents tonight, today, this afternoon, to sit down and have a talk with your kids, with your youngsters, with your preteens, with your teenagers, and in some cases, your young adults. Find out why it is they feel it necessary to walk around with heat every time they leave the house. What are they afraid of? What are they engaging in conduct-wise that would lead to this fear? Is it that you are a gang member and you fear of having a intimate run-in with an opposing gang member? And if that's the feeling, you should get out of the game because you're uncomfortable. You're not living your normal life. You can't be when you're running around afraid. You feel you've got to pack heat to protect yourself. From what? Start being a productive citizen. So on a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon, instead of going to a mall to confront a rival gang member or someone you've had a dispute with, how about you go to a library and spend a couple of hours chilling out at a library, reading a book, or maybe engaging yourself in some computer activities. At least you're not in danger. You shouldn't be. You'll be safe. Because I want to tell you one thing. First of all, you don't even realize and recognize the dangers of what you're involved with. And I've always said, if you're wise, you learn by others' mistakes and you don't make the same mistakes. But if you're unwise, you're going to walk right down fool's lane, right into the trap that is set for someone with your mentality and your thought process. Because you think you're tough, you think you're bad, and you don't take any shit. I've seen enough of you. I've seen enough of you on the obituary pages. The days of Wyatt Earp, Nat Dillon, all those were bad guys. They're all gone. If you continue on this path, this dangerous path that you're on, shooting up malls, shooting up restaurants, shooting up nightclubs, shooting somebody because they cut you off, shooting somebody because they accidentally step on your shoes, shooting up somebody because they are dating your ex-girlfriend. Didn't you ever learn there's more fish in the sea? Come on, fellas. Wake up. Parents, wake up. Have the talk. Tell them. Tell them when they're wayward. You have an obligation to be parents. And that doesn't mean you have to be a friend. It's never too late to have the talk. They deserve it, and so do you. You don't want to hear that phone call late at night or early in the morning saying, "This is Officer so and so and so from the Wichita Police Department. Your son is in trouble." Okay? I'm James Barfield.